There was a tweet that was sent out by Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network earlier who said Aaron Glenn is expected to meet with the Jets later on today. The hope is that they're able to get a deal done. He's a former Jet. It would seem like it would make some sense, but, you know, he could be the head coach of the Jets by the end of today. If not, the Saints are another team that are considering Aaron Glenn if he decides to pass on whatever the New York Jets are offering, which is interesting because the other coordinator for the Detroit Lions, the offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, reportedly finalizing a deal to become the new head coach of the Chicago Bears.
Wow.
Which
would mean that Vegas, once again, doesn't get their man, right?
But, like, why was that ever like that? And you talk to enough people, it's like, oh, that's going to happen. It's a foregone conclusion. Tom Brady can't, talk in certain ways about Ben Johnson because if he hires him afterwards, they've already talked and there's a massive deal out there. And then a couple days after they get eliminated, he agrees to a deal with the Bears. Like, what happened?
This is where I can't stand some of the narratives that the internet and social media create. You have people who have no clue what they're talking about. And it's even some people who have websites. I mean, Pro Football Talk talked about the conflict of interest with Tom Brady. He's announcing a game. He's talked to both these coordinators, but it's a conflict of interest because he's a limited partner of a team. Like, can we just get this out so people understand? Yes, he's Tom Brady. And I'm sure Mark Davis takes into account his opinion. And he might even be a part of the interview process. He doesn't have the final say. He's not the majority owner. Like, until he's that, ultimately, whatever he says, it matters to a degree. And then it doesn't. Because Mark Davis owns the team. He has to make that decision with whoever else he's maybe anointed. And maybe Tom's one of those people. But at the end of the day, it's still Mark Davis's team. Who he wants to hire is who he hires. That's how this all works. So there's no conflict of interest with him calling a game just because he talks to these guys in an interview. Like, what's the conflict? I mean, is Tom Brady giving out the Detroit Lions secrets to the Washington Commandos before the playoff game? Like, I don't really understand like what the big conflict is that Mike Florio or anyone else has an issue with. It's the stupidest discussion we've had for the entirety of the season. So can we just move on? And by the way, Ben Johnson nor Aaron Glenn are going to be the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. So that's one side of this conversation. The other is, what does it say to you guys that Ben Johnson, of all the jobs that are available, is picking a team that's in the division which he's in right now, or at least until it's official, I guess. I guess it's official. But he's leaving the Detroit Lions as the offensive coordinator to stay in the division and go to the Bears. What do you think that says about what he thinks about the rest of the NFC North?
That there's that window in Detroit that's closing, and he sees that as an opportunity. And based on what we saw from that division in the playoffs this year,
I'm going to take my chances right where we at.
Yeah, I know.
I'm familiar with my familiar confines and
I know who my neighbors are, and they don't lock their doors.
Damn.
Yeah.
I mean, I was with AP the other day, and I just still couldn't understand outside of it being for Ben Johnson. Like, I get clearing it out. 1 year, the guy doesn't have pretty much anything that he needs personnel-wise outside of a defensive end and a rookie sensation tight end, and you let him go after a year. Okay, you're doing it because of all of the things we're hearing about Ben Johnson. But now, if Ben Johnson isn't going to Las Vegas, then who is your coaching candidate? And why is that justified? How do you justify this firing now? Is what I would be curious to understand. Because, again, you want to go away from a defensive-minded guy? Okay, makes sense. All the name that just kept surfacing and resurfacing and being connected to Tom Brady's, being enamored by him and all this other stuff and aggressively wanting him has been Ben Johnson. So how does that work? How do you now justify that decision? And have we heard a name emerge as who is the front runner to be the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders?
The only name I saw was Ben Johnson.
That's all I heard. So I'm just saying, if you're legitimizing the firing of Antonio Pierce after 1 year with total negligence and being able to give him a team that would be able to have success in that particular part of the NFL, how do you justify the firing now that you're not getting Ben Johnson? I think most people would say they would be okay. Like, maybe I didn't like him. Maybe he didn't get a fair shake. Who cares? You're bringing in a guy that you believe is going to be someone who offensively can get this team going. But that's not going to happen. So where you go from here?
It might be a different offensive mind if they do it.
Well, I would assume so, but
I want to get back to the decision by Ben Johnson, though, selecting this team, because the one thing, as you talked about, Antonio Pierce, they didn't have in Las Vegas is a quarterback. And that's one of the evaluations that I think, if you're Ben Johnson and you're looking at the Chicago Bears ownership, which has been criticized heavily in many ways, how they've led this search has been criticized heavily. But the one thing I think you could say they have is they have a quarterback. I think Caleb Williams has displayed that this season, his ability to be able to make plays and show enough potential where Ben Johnson says, yeah, I can work with that. Like, I can work with a lot of the pieces that they have around him too. Are we anywhere close to where the Lions are? No, because if you look at that roster, one of the strengths of that offense is their offensive line. They built that thing from the inside out. And clearly the Bears still need to do that. But they have some other pieces around the quarterback position too. So, Ben Johnson knows that division better than any other. And he saw value. He saw, maybe as he's looking at his own team saying, well, they're going to lose Aaron. They're going to lose me. You have a window that's closing on a roster that's hard to keep all these guys together. And maybe we've hit the ceiling with Jared Goff. So if I'm going to take an opportunity where I have to face this team twice a year, I'm okay with that. Because I've got this quarterback, I've got these other pieces, these defensive pieces. I feel like I could turn this thing around and win some football games in a place that hasn't experienced that. And I think he probably looks at Minnesota and says, well, they've got to make a decision. Is Darnold coming back? Is he not? If he's not, it's J.J. McCarthy, who's essentially playing his rookie year since he missed this year with injury. So as good as Justin Jefferson is and Kevin O'Connell is, there can be those growing pains. And by the way, they might lose their defensive coordinator, Brian Flores, if he gets a head coaching job. And then you kind of look at Green Bay and say, well, Green Bay, they can build on the roster. They had a good season too. But he made this decision looking at this division that he knows so well, and even his own team, and saying, yeah, I can beat these guys. Otherwise, you don't take that job. And I think he thinks he can beat him with Caleb Williams and some of the pieces they already have.
Yeah, and I think it says a lot about what he feels about those teams in the division, what he felt about the Raiders. I can't wait to hear what Pete Prisco says about, the Jaguars and where that lines up, because look, like the Trent Baalke stuff that we've talked about, like that could be pushing and steering a lot of people away from the organization. But there was a lot of people that thought, man, if you're the Bears, like nobody's going to want to take over a team that's got Kevin Warren, who's all over the place, who's got Ryan Poles, who's already there. Like they're going to want to be able to pick and choose who they're working with when it comes to the front office. And so he just looked at it and said, I'll take my chances with the quarterback, with what they got on offense, and just hope that the O-line gets better. Like that would feel like would be the most sensible, which is why some of the other ones out there, outside of Jacksonville, who's got a quarterback and some pieces there, just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So Dallas never. I don't even think Dallas got an interview because they waited so long. So
Dallas,
they just Mike McCarthy. I mean, is it Mike McCarthy in Vegas? Is that? I don't even know if he's interviewed. I don't even think they've talked to him. But Mike McCarthy's out there.
Well, it feels like some teams are better than others at announcing who they've interviewed. Like the Bears interviewed everyone.
Oh God!
And they were also very public about that. Whereas other teams, they'll, someone will send out a report, or maybe there's an insider who lets it be known. But the Bears, man, they interviewed pretty much everyone on the face of the planet, besides Lee.
Well, and got the best one out there. So
yeah, maybe there's a method to it.
So now they get to
hey,
brag.
we've seen it all. We've seen the world.
We get to brag about
you're the one we want, Ben.
Being the most coveted, prestigious job out there.
I still think Vrabel was the best one, but this is second best.
I mean, Jonas, how are you feeling about this? This is your team's big job. By the way, the staff is like already coming together, right? Like Dennis Allen will be defensive coordinator. It looks like Darren Rizzi, the special teams coordinator. Yeah. I mean, it's a hell of a staff. I will say that it's a hell of a staff. So,
and Dennis Allen has always been. They've given him credit as one of the better defensive coordinators in the league. It's just as a head coach, like he struggled with the Raiders, struggled with the Saints, and it just never panned out. But the fact that he's going to get gobbled up this quick, I think says a lot about him. Darren Rizzi, like I can't wait to see some of the interactions he has with Tory Taylor. If that's the case, that's going to be a lot of fun.
You said Joy Taylor?
Tory Taylor.
Tory
Taylor.
No.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, the other one.
What, too soon?
No, the other one.
Too soon?
Yeah. Yeah, so that could be. By the way, Antonio Brown won't let it go. He will not let it go.
No,
or whoever's running his account.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's. I'm cautiously optimistic. The O-line is a real problem, and unless they get that fixed, I just don't know what's going to look different this year as opposed to last year. I mean, maybe they won't lose those games they should have won. A couple of those being divisional games that were just late game collapses. But yeah, cautiously optimistic. And everybody says
they've got a ton of cap space.
Yeah,
they're the fourth most in the league.
Now, as far as and you talk to these people in and around the league, as far as play callers go, where does he stack up, Ben Johnson, Brady? As far as
he's right up there at the top. I mean, did you not to go back to the previous game since we're already on Tuesday? Did you see the little quick pitch that turned into a shovel pass?
Yeah.
I mean, you just don't see other teams doing that. It's awesome. It's ridiculously creative. It was perfectly designed because the way it impacts and really dissects the defense, almost cuts it in half with the way they blocked and the way the defense reacts. So it's stuff like that. That's the creativity you're looking for. I mean, you can apply it to any other industry you want. Like people are always looking for that person who's the innovator, they're creative, they're like able to take their business and do things that like they can't foresee or they can't fathom. That's what Ben Johnson's been as a play caller. Now, whether or not he can execute those things and get that Bears team to get it done, that's another story. But that, to me at least, is, I think, the hope for a lot of Bears fans is you are a team that is best known for the 85 Bears, for defense. I think that's fair to say. That and then Walter Payton. Like, those two things. Maybe you'd say Jim McMahon. You might throw some other players in there. But by and large, I think the Chicago Bears are viewed as like the greatest team we had was a defensive team. And this is an era now of offensive football. And I think it's going to be fun for Bears fans to see all the different things that he can dial up. I mean, hell, they've watched it when they get to play the Detroit Lions 2 times a year. So it's going to be fun to see what he's able to do with Caleb Williams because he's got a ton of ability, right? Like he couldn't do as much with Goff because of his lack of mobility. Caleb Williams can do a bunch of stuff. So that's what could be really fun with this offense.